Hey guys, I'm Chelsea. This is going to be probably awkward because I don't know how to make videos. But I wanted to share with you guys kind of where I'm at in my fertility journey. As you can tell from the title of this video, I am starting Femara. This will be my first cycle on Femara. So I wanted to just kind of recap my fertility journey up until this point, my symptoms that led to my diagnosis of PCOS, and just kind of talk about that. I watch a lot of other YouTubers who have similar stories or struggle with infertility, maybe for different reasons. And, you know, I just thought I spend so much time on here, why not document my own journey? So that's what I'm gonna do. I am kind of camera shy, so this is gonna be awkward. I don't know where to look. I don't know. I feel like I keep looking at myself there, but I don't know. Bear with me. So, like I said, I am Chelsea. I am 27 years old. I live in Indiana. My husband and I have been married for 3.5 years. We've been together for about 6.5 years. And out of those 6.5 years that we've been together, we have been actively trying to conceive for about 4 years, I would say. Let me put a disclaimer in here. This is going to be TMI. So if you are family and you don't want to hear about my periods or about, you know, what it takes to conceive a baby, then this video probably isn't for you. So just as a warning there, just want to warn you that, you know, I'm not going to be shy. I'm going to share all the details because there's plenty of people who experience this and I want to make sure that they don't feel alone. So I kind of wrote notes of what I want to talk about, but I'm probably not even going to look. I'm probably just going to tell my story and see how it goes. So, so if we back all the way up to when I was about 12 years old, and like I said, I'm 27 now. My experience with a menstrual cycle has never been normal. But I never knew that it was not normal. I have had an abnormal period since my first one. So, you know, to me, that was normal. So I didn't know that I needed to talk to my parents about what was going on, or bring it up to the doctor because, you know, when you're 12 and you get your period, that's not something that you really talk about too much, or that you feel comfortable talking about. So I didn't. I thought it was normal. But let me describe a little bit of my first initial period symptoms. So I was one of the lucky ones. I actually never got cramps. A lot of people, especially teenagers, get a lot of menstrual cramps and a lot of PMS symptoms. I didn't. But what I did have was, I did not have a normal 28-day cycle. I would go, you know, a few months without having a period, and then I would have a period and it would last a couple months. And I thought that was normal. It just wasn't something that we talked about in my family. Tyson wants to come up and say hi. Come on, up. Hi, buddy. So, you know, so I didn't know that that's not how it was supposed to be. When it came to like pads and tampons, I always doubled up, thought that was normal. I would wear, you know, a maxi pad with a tampon to prevent leaks. And even then it wouldn't always. That's just kind of, you know, how my teenage years went. They were very abnormal. I didn't have a lot of like the acne that I have now, or the weight gain that I have now in high school, but I also was very active. I did a lot of, some sports, swim team, show choir, things like that. So I was pretty active. I was always doing something with my friends. So I think that helped. I wasn't ever like skinny though, even though I was always active. So I didn't notice that I had abdominal weight gain. And, you know, now that I know that my diagnosis is PCOS, it's easy to look back and recognize the symptoms of PCOS, but I had no idea. Actually, This is kind of jumping the gun, but I did not have a diagnosis of PCOS until 2017, maybe. I think it was 2017. And I got, I was, let's see, I was in 2017. It was 3 years ago. I was about 24. I got my period when I was 12. So 12 years I had undiagnosed PCOS. And, there's a lot of symptoms of PCOS, and I will try to put some on the screen if I can figure out how to do that. They don't always relate to just your menstrual cycle. You don't always have like just cramps or heavy bleeding or no bleeding, or you can have symptoms of PCOS all over. You can have anxiety. That's a big thing. We'll talk about that probably in a different video of my struggles with that. But you can have memory loss. I have that pretty bad. You can have, hormonal changes can cause like sweating, heat intolerance. Let's see. You can just overall just not feel well. So you can't pinpoint what is wrong, but you just don't feel well. You get a lot of the symptoms can mimic diabetes too, because a lot of women who have PCOS are insulin resistant. So yeah, you have a slur of symptoms and you don't know what's going on. And all your life you thought you were normal. So then when all of these symptoms started to hit me at once, I had a lot of anxiety over it. I didn't know what was going on. So I think it was in 2016, I actually started college. I was going to school to be a vet tech. And this is about the time when like my symptoms really became noticeable. Before it was tolerable, but now it's like I could not leave the bathroom. I had such heavy bleeding. I don't know how to say what it's called, but I'm going to try to put it on the screen of what it is. I didn't know that's what this was at the time, but I had such heavy bleeding that I would just stand up, and like I said, I'm going to be honest and real. So if you don't want to hear this, click away. But I would stand up and blood would pool down my legs onto the ground. My menstrual cycle was scary. And, so that was happening. And, on top of the extreme bleeding, I would also bleed for 3 or 4 months at a time, nonstop. So this is kind of gearing towards the diagnosis of PCOS. I was bleeding nonstop. I didn't feel well. I had bled for about 3 to 4 months. I was really weak and tired. I actually, ended up dropping out of school because my anxiety was so bad. I didn't feel well. And so I actually ended up getting a viral infection on top of not feeling well. And I believe that this was in April of 2017. I think that was the time I got a viral infection, and I actually ended up going to the hospital. I couldn't hold fluids down. I was very dehydrated. I didn't feel well. I still had a period that was going on for about 4 months. When they did lab work, they saw that my labs were all over the place. And now it all makes sense, but at the time it was scary. They actually, were worried that it was leukemia. And because they thought this, because my white blood cells were elevated because I had a virus that we weren't really sure what it was. And my red blood cells were very low. I was, probably about a week away from needing a blood transfusion because of how much and how long I had been bleeding. So my doctor gets my lab work. He sees that the numbers are crazy, and he actually refers me to an oncologist in Lafayette. So that was pretty terrifying to have to walk into a cancer doctor office and see, posters all over the wall about cancer, and I'm freaking out, and I have anxiety already. So my worst case scenario, I just knew it was leukemia. Nobody could tell me any different at that time. you know, because leukemia can cause issues with your periods. So it all kind of aligned to leukemia. So I was terrified. We go in for a consult with the oncologist, and she kind of gets a patient history. She looks at me and she wants to do a blood draw. And they do this pretty quick because they know that your nerves are high, you need answers. So they did a blood draw at the doctor's office. And they told me they would probably call me within the hour. And so when they did, they called me, and it was kind of a good news, bad news situation. Good news is my blood looked fine. I did not have any kind of blood cancer, which, you know, was a relief. I was so scared. I couldn't eat. I was just waiting for the results. I was terrified. But I was so anemic. I had basically no mature red blood cells. All of my blood cells that they could see in the microscope were all immature, small, because my body was making it so quickly, which was good, but it was starting to not be able to keep up. So that is what explained like the weakness, the fatigue, was being anemic, really severely anemic. So I was put on an iron protocol where I had to take high dose of iron, and I was put on birth control to try and stop the bleeding. So that was really scary. And at that time, I was also going through, you know, my anxiety had gotten really bad during that time. I was going through some personal things. So that was a really rough time in my life. I knew that I had wanted kids. I'd wanted kids forever. And then being told that I really need to go on birth control. Really, you know, you can't get pregnant if you're on birth control. So, but, you know, I also couldn't get pregnant if my cycles were not regular, and if, you know, if I didn't stop bleeding. So she referred me then to a gynecologist. So let me back up a little bit. I really hadn't been seeing like a regular gynecologist up until this point. Again, I thought everything was normal. I did see a primary care doctor, but I didn't talk about my periods, which I really, if anybody's watching this and if you get anything out of this, it's please be open and honest and talk to your doctors about what's going on, even as a kid. Don't be embarrassed or shy or don't be afraid, because had I, you know, I always think like, had I talked about my experience, and even though I thought it was normal, maybe some of this stuff wouldn't happen. My PCOS wouldn't have gone so long untreated. You never know. So please be open and honest with your doctors. They care. They're there for you. I've been so lucky to have some really great doctors along the way. So the oncologist refers me to the gynecologist, and that is when I get my PCOS diagnosis. So he also does blood work. He checks my hormones, thyroid, some other things, don't really know. And then he also does an ultrasound to try and see if there's something obvious that's causing the bleeding. Look for like abnormalities, polyps, tumors, even though obviously I thought it was probably cancer. So doing the ultrasound, he looked at my ovaries. And I'll try to, I don't know, insert a picture. I keep saying that. I bet there's not going to be a single picture inserted. I'll figure that out one day. But ovaries with PCOS almost look like, this is gross, but chocolate chip cookies. You can see, so like you have your ovary, it's like a kind of a circle, and along the lining of the ovary, you see like in the ultrasound, like just like kind of like little sacs all the way through it. And both of my ovaries were filled with like these little sacs. So, so he saw that, plus my blood work, plus my symptoms of male pattern hair growth, which, you know, I'll talk about and be open and honest about. And this first video is probably going to be pretty long. Anyway, I've had male pattern hair growth, I don't know, probably, I wouldn't say like right when I got my period, but probably towards like when I was like 16 to 18, I probably started to notice it. And my mom also had struggled with facial hair. And so growing up, I always saw that she had to get waxed. And So again, I thought it was normal. So, you know, it's not. A little bit of facial hair is normal for women. Body hair is normal, but the amount that I had was not. I shave my face every day. I know a lot of people will be able to relate to that. So anyways, so he looked at all my symptoms. He looked at my blood work. He looked at my ultrasound, and we came up with the diagnosis of PCOS. And this was in, like I said, 2017. I was getting married in a few months. I was stressed out. I was being put on birth control, which I did not want. But we did it. I went on birth control. It regulated my cycle somewhat. I mean, more regular than I'd ever experienced. They were, you know, probably about 30 days cycles. The bleeding wasn't so bad that I had to double up. That was exciting. So I was on birth control for probably a year. Oh, and he also started me on metformin. Metformin is a very common medicine used for PCOS. It helps with the insulin resistance, and it can help with some of the physical symptoms. So I started metformin and I started birth control. So I was on birth control for about a year. I think it was, yeah, probably about a year. And then I went off of birth control because we wanted again to start trying for a baby. And the craziest thing happened. I went off birth control, and that cycle I got pregnant. That was my first pregnancy. That was my first time ever seeing a positive line on a test, and I have taken hundreds of tests. I have taken pregnancy tests almost every month since I turned 18 and started being sexually active. I had taken pregnancy tests every month until I was 24 and had never saw a positive. And I was so excited. I went right away to get confirmation. We did confirmation. My doctor gave me a projected due date. It was like February, I think, of the following year was my projected due date. We had scheduled my 6-week ultrasound to hopefully see a heartbeat. I had told my family. A lot of people wait until 12 weeks to tell, but I was so excited. There was no way I was waiting. So I told them that day, the day that we confirmed with the doctor. We called out-of-state family and told them. I was just over the moon. I did not think that this was ever going to happen to me. And the month I go off birth control, I got pregnant. Sadly, that pregnancy ended in what is called a chemical miscarriage or a chemical pregnancy. So basically, the egg was fertilized but never implanted or never implanted correctly. It was a very early miscarriage. I probably miscarried about 5 or not even 6 weeks. It was probably about 5 weeks. My worst fear came true. I had, worst case scenario. I always think of the worst case scenario. And in this case, it happened. I just had a feeling like this is too good to be true. Like this can't happen. I've been trying, I hadn't necessarily been trying to get pregnant up until that point, but I hadn't been preventing it. And I'd always wanted to be a mom. So I actually had an interview the morning I woke up having a miscarriage, and I went, even though I knew I was bleeding and it did not seem like normal pregnancy bleeding. And so I got up and I went to my interview, sat right through the interview. All the while I had a miscarriage and never said anything. After the interview, I went home, I took a nap, I was exhausted, and then I went to the hospital. And I confirmed what I already knew. They did an ultrasound. There was no sac. They said I had already passed everything on my own. My HCG was almost back down to 0 by the time I went to the hospital. So it was awful. I wanted that baby so bad. And that was the one and only time that we have ever had a confirmed pregnancy. We think the same thing has happened probably a couple of times since then, but That was the only time we ever got it confirmed. So that was hard and that was sad. And like I said, that was in 2018 that I had the miscarriage. So here we are a couple years later, almost 3 years later, and I've not been pregnant since. Never had, like I said, never had a confirmed pregnancy since then. And you know, my gynecologist has tried several things. We've done an HSG test, which I'll talk about in another video. I'll talk all about my experience with that. We've done a lot of ultrasounds. My husband had a semen analysis. So we've done all of the steps leading up to where we're at now, which where we're at now is a fertility specialist. And I am just waiting on my cycle to start for me to start Femara. Femara is an ovulation inducing medication. It is like one of the first fertility medications that you would be prescribed. So I'm nervous. I am optimistic. My doctor's optimistic. Let me say that everything with my husband has been normal. My HSG, which is an examination of my fallopian tubes, looked normal. So my goals right now are to lose weight and wait for my period to start and take the Femara. So I'm gonna probably make a video my first day on the Femara, talk a little bit more about how I take it, and then like what our next steps are as far as like planned timed intercourse, ovulation kits or OPKs, and then like mid-cycle ultrasounds and scans to see if there's follicles. So I'm scared. I'm ready. This has been, like I said, probably 4.5, 5 years of actively trying to have a baby. And like I said, I'm 27, my husband's 30. So while we're still young, we really, you know, we want this to happen sooner rather than later. So this video has been kind of long, so I'm going to stop it there. It's kind of my history up to my diagnosis of PCOS and where I'm at now with my fertility doctor. But I will make like separate individual videos about the HSG exam, maybe about my husband's semen analysis, if there's any curious people out there about that process. So I will say Josh was really embarrassed, but that's okay. I would have been too. But I just kind of want to make these videos, maybe even if nobody ever watches them, just make them for myself. So if in the future I have my baby, I can look back and see like the journey that I went through and how wanted this baby is. So I'm excited. I look forward to making more videos. If you're watching this, I hope that you will watch my videos when they come out. If you have any questions, you can comment and I'll answer. If you're going through similar experiences, please let me know. If you have any encouraging stories or any advice on Femara, I would love to hear it. So thank you.